Hey guys, it's Danny. Today we are going to work with the Catasetum orchids. Well, just one. I cannot bear to see them like this. They need a repot, they need a setup change. If you've watched my success and fails video of 2018, you already know the story. But for those of you who missed that video or who are new to my channel, check the description down below. I'll link it there. I'll recap also very briefly. The thing is, these orchids are very big drinkers in their growing season, that is. They are the type of orchids with a very particular, let's say, type of growth. They take a dormancy theoretically during winter time and they grow during the warm months. Now, when I mean grow, I mean a fully leafed big pseudobulb in most cases within 3 to 4 months. That's a tremendous amount of growth these guys need to put on. Therefore, they do consume a lot of fertilizer and also a lot of water. Now, I've been doing pretty fantastic with these types of orchids for quite a few years. Last year, I decided to try semi-hydro with them, being that this setup implies a reservoir, and this is actually a semi-hydro setup, it's not self-watering. So, being that we have a reservoir here, a constant supply of water, I thought, well, it should do the trick. It should be superb in my summertime. And well, it was pretty great for the first half of 2018 when the Pleiadiums developed really fast, they even bloom, everything was okay. But then, in the second part of 2018, all hell broke loose, pretty much as they say, in the sense that once the root system reached a certain size and the orchid reached a certain size, it started to drink all of this reservoir within 1 day. I'm not even kidding. And they were not outside, they were still in my grow space. And while I do my best to take care of my orchids on a daily basis, some days are just not going to happen. And with these guys, if you missed one of those days in the middle of summer, it was not very pleasant. So all of these orchids have been stressing me out all summer long due to the fact that they did not have enough water at their disposal. So ever since then, I have been cooking up a new setup for them, which in my environment should do better. So as a final, let's say, thought on the whole semi-hydro situation, I think it's absolutely wonderful for Catasetums in the right conditions. If you wouldn't have a subtropical climate, but rather a more temperate climate or even a cooler climate, I think it would do great. It does provide the water that they need. However, if it's very hot, if it's very dry, windy, aerated, I'm not entirely sure if semi-hydro is the answer for these guys. So yeah, for me, it's not, sadly, but it's okay. These orchids are the type of orchids which kind of let go of their roots on an annual basis. When they have their dormancy, most of their roots pretty much die off as well, depending on the hybrid or the species, of course. But these are not like Cattleyas or Dendrobiums or things of the sorts to be set back by a repot. They're mainly set back by poor watering, poor fertilization, and care overall in the growing season. Wintertime is reset, which is both good and bad because I can definitely go ahead and repot this guy right now without suffering setback, but bad because, well, every year a repot would be a good idea. If not every year, every 2 years, pretty much obligatory, a repot is needed for orchids grown in containers. This very specific pattern of growth also means another thing. If we repot these orchids in their growing season, when everything is just so crucial to be stress-free and to be on point, we are going to suffer a setback. So this is why I waited so long for repotting these guys. Even more, I could have gone for self-watering this summer. And even though I know I wouldn't have disturbed the root system all too much, I kind of didn't want to risk it. With Catasetums, it's always slightly tricky, and they only bloom once a year. So if you mess up in the summertime with them, no blooms for 1.5 years. So I didn't want to risk it, and maybe I should have because my Catasetums really didn't enjoy the last part of 2018. So that's one of the issues and the main issue, the whole dehydration situation. The second issue, the display. As I was saying, the old roots don't really hang around too much, so the old part of the orchid is not secured because it doesn't have roots. The new part of the orchid, the latest pseudobulb, and maybe a little bit the one before that, those are the ones who have roots, who are anchored, and as a result of that, the orchid is really prone to just flopping over because There's nothing to hold it here in place. And considering the new root system is not fully formed, in summertime the orchids do have a tendency to just flop over under the sheer weight of the pseudobulb and the leaves. So that's another thing I want to address. This little stake that I put here was not enough. I shall be using a full plant support for this. This is something I talked about in the past as well. It didn't work out so great with leca because leca tends to be a rather rough medium, and putting this inside the pot is a chore, to be honest. But today we are going to be using sphagnum moss. So inserting and maintaining the round support should be a breeze. Alrighty, so with all of that theory out of the way, let me tell you what I will be using today. My DIY self-watering pot, yes, I will be using a self-watering pot. Now everything looks pretty nice and pretty manageable, but in the middle of summer, trust me, it's not with these guys. So I need a self-watering pot, and I'm going for the rather bigger size for these orchids. With Catasetums generally, I don't care how big the orchid is, how many pseudobulbs it has and so on. The root system is pretty much always massive, no matter if you have one pseudobulb or three. Again, because the main root productor is the new growth, not the old growth. The old growth loses roots. So in my experience, most of them, no matter the size, will pretty much always have a very big root system. So a big pot for me. And of course, as I was saying, I shall be using sphagnum moss, which is a lot more even, a lot more water retentive. So not only the reservoir will hold the water, but also the sphagnum moss. So added water to the pot. I'm taking all of these precautions because, oh man, last summer was not pretty with Catasetums. So that said, let's get to unpotting the orchid. So just like with any other unpotting, we shall pretty much go about unpotting the Catasetum in the same way. And oh my goodness, it would seem this guy didn't actually produce as many roots as I hoped, as I thought it would. Typically, the roots of a Catasetum do start to branch out and continue growth and pretty much end up with this massive bulb at the end of the year. It didn't really happen here, and I can see a lot of branches just stopped growing. This is a sign of just dryness. Catasetums, as robust as they are, don't appreciate drying out at all. So I'm thinking the poor guy only used these roots to hydrate itself, and it still dried up within a day. How about that? So I think a setup change will be beneficial. So I'll get rid of this, put it in my recycle bin, and we'll be back with a small discussion on the root system. And here we are. This is the total amount of roots that I'm going to keep on my orchid. Let's have a little discussion on this because opinions vary when it comes to keeping the roots from year to year. As I was saying, Catasetum roots don't really last on the plant all that long. They die off mostly during their dormancy or the next year. There are Catasetum growers which just chop off everything, and that's pretty okay. I actually did have my Cycnotus Wine Delight last year remaining without any type of root. I only had one pseudobulb to work with. I lost the other ones, and he did pretty okay, just like the others. He also bloomed. You've seen him in bloom, so that's totally fine. There are some growers though that prefer to leave on one or two roots just in case bad stuff can happen. And being that my Catasetums are not full fit form right now, I do want to leave on one or two roots, which will die off during this year, but it's okay, it's just two roots, two little roots. Now, being that I do have a lot of pseudobulbs on my orchid and also a new growth on the way, this might actually be an overkill, but I've always felt just a little bit better leaving one root, one viable root or two viable roots on the orchid when I repotted it. But just so you know, there are growers which just chop off everything, and it's absolutely fine for them. I just like to have a little backup plan. Not sure if it actually helps anything, but that's my way of doing things. Doesn't mean it's correct. So now let's prepare the pot, and actually I need to prepare the sphagnum moss. Alrighty, so the medium that I shall be using is New Zealand sphagnum moss combined with a little bit of perlite. If you're interested in the brands that I use, check the description, I list them there. Here is the catch. We are theoretically still in the dormancy period, just coming out of the dormancy since this orchid has a new growth just emerging here. Now at this time, we shouldn't really water the orchid because it's not needing water. It's not actively growing. We don't have a pseudobulb and leaves forming. We do still have a few roots, but they don't consume a lot. Also, this orchid didn't really need water in the past month, all too much. So at this point, Catasetums don't really need water, they shouldn't be watered, but sphagnum moss is unworkable when it's dry, so we need to dampen it. So what I did was just dampen the moss a little bit. It's not soggy in any way, it's not dripping. I used the least amount of water that I could, and that's okay. I did it before, nothing bad will happen. We just need to maintain hygiene in an airy environment and so on and so forth, but a little water is okay. So just like with any other repotting, I shall place a layer on the bottom, or actually multiple layers, because my orchid doesn't really have roots. I will still maintain this setup airy. I'm not going to pack it. Even if we're dealing with a big drinker, we still don't want to suffocate the roots. This is still an epiphytic orchid. I'm not going to bother with removing the leca, it does no harm. And actually, if I would like this medium to be more airy, I could actually use leca, since I need to change it in a year anyway. Usually I don't like to mix leca with organic stuff. The reason I use leca is for prolonged stay in a pot, let's say, but with Catasetums this is not doable because the roots die off. So instead of perlite, definitely leca can be used, and I would use it, of course, but since I have the perlite, I'd rather use the leca with something that would enjoy it more, such as cattleyas. And here we are, my orchid is potted, but it's very wobbly. This is normal, we don't have any roots, and this support will help us maintain the orchid in place. Now, I was actually looking for a tinier one, but they did not have it in stock, and I looked for something like this everywhere. I didn't want to order it from Amazon, so I just went with this, which is a little bit bigger than what I wanted, but it's okay. It will do the job. It will maintain my Catasetum straight and in place. And I think you can see that it appears to be a little bit tall, but the problem with the Catasetum is not the pseudobulb itself, it's actually the leaves. They're the big and heavy ones, and when the new growth is developing, it is actually a little bit taller than the finished product, which tends to flare out. So even though it is a tall stake, or actually tall support, it's okay. It's gonna be okay, because I want to train the leaves. Now, for the top layer, I will not be using anything yet. I will be using some pebbles probably that I received from one of my viewers, or maybe a little bark, I don't know, I will see about it. Being that I will not water this orchid for a lot of time now, I don't need a top layer right now because no algae will form on dry moss. And speaking about watering Catasetums, when can we start to water them? Well, I do have a video on this, check it down below. People have different opinions, yet again, everybody has their own technique. Pretty much I like to water when the roots are capable to absorb water, and there is a way to notice that. So you will see that in the description down below in the video. That's just my way of doing things, and it works very accurately for me. Until then though, if I don't see the pseudobulbs shrivel excessively, I will not put any water here or in the reservoir, and I'll just let this moss dry out on its own. And pretty much that is it for the Catasetums. And looking at it now, I think I will have a little issue. These leaves will fall pretty soon, so this orchid will not be inside the circle anymore. So what I will do is cut the legs to fit. If that happens, we'll see. Because if the leaves fall, the orchid will not be stable anymore. I don't know, we'll see. I do rather prefer the taller support, being that the leaves are tall and I want to keep them contained. In the next few weeks, I'll see how these leaves fall, and if I have to, I'll just shorten the support. So I have quite a few supports. All of my Catasetums will be in this setup. I'm just waiting for them to start new growth, just so I know that new roots will be on their way within 2 weeks or so. Some of them still require water, actually, which is, I know it's weird, but there we go. They're not all the same. So this has been it for the Catasetums for today. So yeah, maintenance-wise, they're not the easiest ones for me in this climate. That's why I didn't actually buy a lot of them, but I do like them, so I'll see how to make the setup more efficient. I hope this will work. So alrighty guys, enough blabbing. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this weekend. I hope you have a great weekend ahead of you. And you know the drill, like or dislike this video below, subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, tutorials, Q&As, and other fun orchid subjects. And if you like YouTube to notify you whenever I upload a new video, just turn on notifications for my channel. Also, again, if you're interested in my setup and the products that I use, I always list them in the description. With that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!